Hey everyone, welcome to the X Podcast. It's great to have you with us. Today I got Russ and I got Tim here, and we're gonna sing song this whole podcast. So.
What are you doing with your voice? Why are you singing the intro?
I love your guys' outfits today.
No, thank you.
They look great.
Yeah.
Specifically, the shoes of our.
Can you put your foot up on the desk?
Wow! Look at those things.
Woo!
Oh my gosh! Hold on, let me touch. Oh, I can't touch them.
And these are called
Oh
the
my gosh.
Scooby-Doos.
LeBrons, man. Oh my goodness. Look at those things. Holy crap. Wow.
This is really cool.
Put you on preachers and sneakers.
Oh my. You said those only cost a couple thousand.
They were a gift.
How much were they?
A couple thousand?
No.
They were a gift. I got them a
nice.
gift from someone.
That's
Who?
cool.
Did look them up though. I think
Who
they were
bought
about
'em for you?
$160.
That's nice.
Who bought them for
170.
you?
I can't tell.
Okay.
Man, the table's really dirty all of a sudden. Anyway.
You're always spilling coffee on it.
Yes.
Woo! Okay, so we got some fun things to talk about today. So Russ is going to kick us off. He
Yeah.
has an obsession that he would
He
like
does.
to
He needs to confess it.
share
I've been
about.
on a little bit of a rabbit hole of everything Elon Musk, and I want to talk about him. I think not just Elon Musk, but I think from his life, there's several things that emanate that are huge when it comes to the future. And so
Elon Musk is the future.
he is the future.
Just
I mean,
like-
is he the wealthiest man in the world
yes,
right
he
now?
is
Just like-
officially.
Is that official?
Just
He's
like Fauci
officially.
said,
It's funny,
Fauci is science.
I feel like that changes day to day.
It
Like,
hasn't
it's
changed
like,
in a minute.
Oh, it's this guy. Oh,
It
it's
did
this
for a
guy.
second.
Oh,
Him
well,
and Bezos were neck and neck for a
Well,
second.
and then all he did, and this is what Elon Musk does,
But then he
is
said,
he goes and he puts a tweet out there
Mm-hmm.
about some corporation or some platform that he happens to own a bunch of stock in or just bought, and then all of a sudden it jumps 200% because that just happened.
Well, Dogecoin
No,
and
no, it just happened this
well,
last week.
He is big in
He just-
cryptocurrency.
no, he just did another one.
cryptocurrency,
What was it?
And also, he told the UN just whenever we're releasing this, but it was like yesterday that he made a pledge to the UN. If you guys can actually convince me that
Yeah, I
you
wanna talk
can
about
end
this.
hunger
Yeah.
using
Yeah.
$6 billion, I'll give it to you.
So right now they say he's worth $300 billion,
Mm-hmm.
which makes him officially the richest person in the history of the universe. But let's start with that.
I wonder if he
So
gets to $1 trillion.
He said he can.
I think
so right now, the
SpaceX goes public.
the World Food Program has said they're in an unusual crisis. They said that could be the statistic wrong, about 44 million people are on the brink of death by famine. And there's always a lot of humanity that is at that brink. But they said right now, a combination of the pandemic, climate change, and unrest has led to this moment where it's just been exponentially multiplied. Because apparently the World Food Program brings in about 120 million a year. But they said on top of that, they need $6 billion to solve this immediate, what they're calling a hopefully one-time crisis. So they called on the one percenters, the top 400 billionaires, to just give a small fraction of what they have to solve the problem. And Elon Musk tweeted back pretty snarkily and said, if you can show me on this Twitter thread how $6 billion can solve world, and he said, and show it through open, what was the term, open sourcing or whatever, to where the
Yeah.
public can follow along to watch how the proceeds are being handled. He said, I will sell Tesla stock and do it right now.
Right, like accountability.
But then, I don't know if you saw it, but David Beasley, the World Food Program chief, responded, did an interview, and I actually thought his thoughts, the way he approached it, were pretty gracious, because he didn't condemn and say, "Oh, you evil." He said, "No, he said, thank you. You can tell they're desperate." He said, "Thank you for even engaging in this, and I can show you exactly how we would do it." And I don't think Elon Musk has responded yet. But to me, several fascinating things on that, and I'm curious y'all's thoughts, is what is the moral responsibility of those with just unreal, ungodly amounts of money? And two, because I thought two things. One, like, please, will the people that are uber rich right now, please come to the help of those that are dying? Like, can you imagine if that was one of your family members? The other side of me, just because I feel like there's been an increase lately of anti-wealth sentiment of people that are against those that are successful, always trying to pull them down or demonize people. I don't know. I have thoughts about that. I'm curious, y'all.
I think definitely the wealth gap is alarming. The haves and have-nots. I don't really get bothered by the super rich very much. I like Elon just as much as you do because I think not because he smoked weed with Joe Rogan. That is not why I like him. I think that, which by the way, stock plummeted after that. Did you know about that?
No.
That was a while ago. But I think he genuinely wants to like enhance humanity. So
Yeah,
I think
he
that
does.
like I think that he
said that over and over.
yeah he does things that add to the human experience and
I think we need the uber rich people like him because, and again, the reason why he's become uber rich is because of what he's created. I think he and people like him are the ones who are creating the future of our world. And they're doing it for, like, if you go look at a lot of the quotes and the things he says about work and everything is like, you should be getting up and doing something that matters to change the world. And I think people like him need resource to do that, like SpaceX and all the things that he's doing. And you can look at Tesla and for whatever reason, but he'll tell you all of he said every business that he owns, that he has created, he has done it not just to make money, but he thinks he makes the world better. So electric cars, we're reducing emissions, SpaceX, different thing.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just more of a fantasy and wanting to go, become a multi-planetary species. But
he said when he was in college, he wrote down on a piece of paper the 3 things that he thought would affect the future of humanity the most.
Yeah.
And it was internet, sustainable energy, and extraplanetary existence.
yeah, and so he's actually creating that. What's been fascinating to see is that when you think about the space exploration and the things that he's been doing, Jeff Bezos is now in, Blue Origin, all this, that as soon as NASA got out of the way, the government, who hasn't actually done much at all in a long time, and it came to these private entrepreneurs who said, wait, we'll go create this. Now, all of a sudden, it has exploded in what they've been able to do.
Yeah.
And now the government is going and paying them contracts.
Right.
Like he just got a contract to be able to, And so I think you need people like that to be uber rich and because they need the resource to create the future. I like it when, let's put it this way, I like it where someone like Elon Musk, who actually is creating things that he thinks will make the world better and the future better, they're wealthy versus just some other people who want to just create their own world and make their world better rather than better for others.
Yeah,
what's that story of Elon when he made $100 million or $200 million and he put half of it into Tesla and half of it into SpaceX and ended up he had $0 left. And I'm thinking,
really? He
he risked everything to build these 2 companies. And I'm like, who would do that? I mean, if 99.99% of people received $100 million, my life would probably be over. Not my life would be over, but my working life and I'm sure my aspirations would change a little bit. I mean, I'm pretty cool for a while, but not him. And I think that in almost a way, and I'm not sure if this is if this is interesting to anybody, but in my mind, Elon Musk's money. I don't know everything about it, but it doesn't seem as dishonest as more of an Amazon's gain of wealth, more of a Jeff Bezos because of all the data collection that they've done through all the, and really a huge part of their business is how they store data on the cloud. I mean, the AWS systems, you know much about that, but it's IT, kind of referring to you over for this point, but I don't know. It just seems a little more honest. It seems like he's got some plans to help the world. So I don't know.
I mean, I do think the question about that moral responsibility. I mean, I think that's. I don't know that moral responsibility can be pressured from society. Like to me, there's something kind of that's in. I don't know. It's just. There's something that doesn't seem right about that. And where do you draw that line? I don't think people have moral responsibility. I think whether or not they have personal. I think the question to me should be a little bit more, if you were to, and again, if you take someone like Elon Musk or say someone who built their fortune, they see it differently than somebody who was handed down generational wealth. That didn't
and
do
he
anything.
says that too. Yeah. He actually thinks there should be a tax on the dead, but not on those that have created it.
Well, it's because of capitalism. Like that is going to spur advancement. It's going to spur creation. The moment you tax the ones who are creating, you're going to reduce what is created versus taxing it getting passed on. Which, funny thing I just heard the other day, Shaquille O'Neal, he is just hilarious, and he's incredibly smart with his money. If you ever hear any of the stuff he talks about with his money, someone told him
It
about
was like
investing,
150 Papa John's.
but I mean he.
I'm not joking.
I know,
I'm
but
serious.
he's
I love Papa John's.
he's brilliant with it.
Garlic
And
sauce.
and he said
love
this.
it.
I was listening to this kind of like interview or part they were playing. They were like, his kids made some comment and said something about we're rich, and he said, "We ain't rich." He said, "I'm rich. You ain't rich." And I just love that. I mean, that's that perspective is like, no, I built this wealth. I mean, he went to be a professional basketball player and everything else he's created. Like, no, I'm rich. You're not rich.
Right.
And so you get people like that, and then you get people like Warren Buffett, who is determined to give away all of his money and none of it to his kids.
Yeah.
I mean, before he dies, his goal is to get rid of all of his wealth. And so, I think we see a lot
Thanks,
of
Dad.
extremes. Yeah, but I think we see a lot of extremes when it comes to it.
And a lot of the uber wealthy are incredible philanthropists. Like I
Bill
think
Gates.
Yeah,
they're giving away a huge portion of their.
I guess that's
wealth.
part of the question I have is like
They're divorced.
I agree.
I
There's
know.
an
I just
alarming.
That's how he gave away half of his wealth.
Oh, no. Okay.
I agree. There's an alarming wealth gap. I think the
true.
tax code is broken for sure. I think there's the hopes of what you. I think none of us know what we would do with money until we had that amount. So I think it's an arrogant assumption to say, well, if I had that, you don't know that. But I think it's definitely human to hope that somebody would give that away. There's a lot of things that need to be fixed. But the overall demonization of people that work hard and get successful seems to be on the rise. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think there's always a bit of jealousy and envy at the bottom of it, and I think we should care about those who don't have anything.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that is, I think the challenge and the reason why that does not permeate through society and culture is because that's a Christian ethic, and it's not a different ethic. It's not a secular ethic. It's not an ethic of good people. You can go all the way back to the early followers of Jesus in a time where life was not life of children and women and things were not revered. And then you saw these followers of Jesus who would step up and adopt and take babies from out in the public where they were left outside to basically die, and they're taking them in. And so what's interesting to me is that there are a lot of people in our secular world that do not have any kind of moral ethic to base this idea of giving it away, sacrificing for others in need. That is a Christian ethic.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that there are people who aren't Christians who are good people that have a desire to do that. What I'm saying is that we should not probably expect societies and governments that are secular at the core of their nature to do this, because I don't think they will. I really don't. And so I think it ends up becoming a very personal, like, does it become do they have a moral responsibility? I don't know. Whenever you say that, I guess the question I would immediately ask is, okay, well, what's the line someone has to cross in wealth to now have a moral responsibility? I think I could argue that the three of us around this table should have our own moral responsibility to help those who have less than us.
Yeah.
And so I think that's hard. What I'm saying is it's hard to put pressure on that from a government structure or a cultural structure to say, oh, you're worth $1 billion, you need to go and deal with poverty. I think that's a challenge.
I think that I agree. I don't think that there's, in my mind, the only thing that those people have an obligation to do is whatever they want to do. I mean, to be honest with you, I think that there's more of an obligation on people who feel burdened to make a difference in an area to do what it takes to meet the needs of the people that you're burdened about.
Yeah.
So, for example, I mean, this is a really obvious one, but the WFP, whatever, they've been given an opportunity now to have a platform because Elon Musk, whether he's going to actually do that or not, he retweeted it or whatever, which gave a popularity. Now they have a platform to compel and persuade individuals in order to engage with their cause. Because it's the weakest argument in the world. We say, well, you should care about this. Okay, well, I don't know why to care. Everybody's got their own list of things that they care about. You know, if you were an orphan and you lived in the foster care system and you were a foster kid, then you care about those kids a lot more than people who can't empathize with that, right? I mean, if you poverty, if you
came from poverty,
right? Mental illness, or if you had a parent or a sibling who struggled with a mental illness like schizophrenia or bipolar or multiple personalities, like all these things, then you have or had a parent who committed suicide or brother who committed suicide, then you have different compassions. And so the whole idea, I almost think it's an entitlement culture. So I care about this, so you should too.
Yeah.
It's like, nope.
If you care about it, you do something about it.
If you care about it, then you have to come up with a compelling argument. So I talk about him a lot, I think, on this podcast. But one of these guys that I listened to him talk about, he could do that. Ronald Reagan was very good at articulating and compelling people to believe a certain thing. And I think there's a whole era of people, not just him, but not just that side of the aisle, both sides of the aisle, but people who could compel people to believe in different things. You got Martin Luther King. You got, I think Barack Obama was that way. I mean, you heard him talk, and there was what no one can argue was how he could communicate. And so I think that we're almost in more of a it's not a crisis of there's too many wealthy people and there's too many poor people. I think the crisis is we can't communicate well the needs that need to be met to people who can actually make a difference.
We can't come together either. Because where I say I don't think you could enforce this as a moral responsibility on individuals, I do think, and again, I don't know how this plays out, but when you look at global influence and leadership and when it comes to all of us on the planet together, and you see that there are countries and nations where you see, a huge percentage of people are dying without food and some of the basics, and you have these very advanced countries. I think, again, I don't know where that pressure comes from, but I do think there's something to be said for these global institutes coming together and actually saying, I think the sad thing is like you said, lack of communication. We could solve this. So I was listening to a podcast a long while ago. Jordan Peterson had this doctor, when I looked him up, Dr. Bjorn Lomborg, and he is a Danish author, and he.
I love Danishes.
You do? Okay. So, anyways, he. But one of the things that he's done, he's written books on this. He's written books on he's kind of like he's spent his life kind of really studying climate change and all this, but also the solutions. He's like one of the top names of people for solutions for solving this. And he has written books. He wrote a book called False Alarm and How to Spend $75 billion to Make the World a Better Place. And he's done studies and books that say if we had $75 billion, we could end global poverty. We could, I mean, it was on and on. It was like we could fix education for the world. It was this, and he's actually done studies on this. So when Elon Musk tweets and goes, well, if you can show me how $6 billion is going to do this, and that, there are people that are experts who have spent their lives trying to literally figure out how could we address this. And not just, and if you listen to this guy talk, it's not just lofty, well, if we had this much money, we could do this. No, he gives strategic steps and plans for what you would need to do to actually fix this.
It's crazy.
And
$75 billion.
$75 billion
and we're talking, the conversation in this country right now is whether or not the Democratic Party can agree on a 1.75 trillion or 3.5 trillion
budget plan for these things. So when you hear about that, and then you see how much money that gets spent in one area, and then you have this guy who is literally going, I'll tell you what to do. If you had $75 billion, you can make the world a better place. It does. I remember listening to him going, it really brings a lot into perspective. It brings a whole lot into perspective. It's what nations like ours and other,
have the capability of doing
to do. And so I would probably try to say it would be, in perfect world, less of a individual moral. Now, how do those governments get funded to do that? Like Elon Musk says, why don't we fix the taxes stuff? Because as I mentioned before, when we were talking about Facebook in a previous episode, I was talking about Facebook went and launched their sites in Ireland and other places because they got out of a bunch of taxes. So it's When you talk about fair share, the fair share to me, if you want to talk about anything fair share, would be figuring out a way that there is a fair share for people across the board in our country to be able to pay an equal amount. I'm not saying the same amount, an equal amount.
Yeah.
It's
So
hard,
if I've got to pay a certain percentage of tax for what I do, and then you find out, and then you hear all the stuff's been up there about, Donald Trump and his businesses and how much taxes he's paying or not paying, and all that stuff that's coming out, and he's not the only one. Everybody's using these loopholes so they don't have to pay taxes.
Why do you think that they're space programs? I mean, those are tax write-offs.
Yes, and
So,
this is. I mean, I'm just saying though. This is why we could have the means to do it. Is what I'm saying.
yeah, you think about the narrative right now. There's a problem. The problem is billionaires not doing their part, which maybe I don't know that that's not true. I just think that the bigger problem is, like I said, in my opinion, our inability to communicate the cause, our lack of trust in people to manage these. Something like you have to. Like it's hard for anybody to trust a Congress where all this lobbying stuff's going on, where you guys haven't even read that, or you read that bill, or you left that job in Congress to go immediately be a lobbyist, and now you're this, and I think it's hard to trust any of that, and so those same people are trying to tell us that it's the wealth gap that's the problem, and the billionaires that aren't paying their fair share or whatever it is. I mean, again, that's just my opinion.
It's a good point, because the people who are saying that the wealthy need to pay and step up and pay more for this are the ones that we're supposed to trust. Like if Elon Musk goes, okay, I'll give you $6 billion. Like he's saying, who's to trust it? I mean, the moment people get their hands on money, greed naturally takes over. I mean, we've seen it in Washington, and so now I think that's a big question. I think that's a question that I think it's pretty awesome that Elon Musk, I love the fact he's like that. Well, if you show me how to do it, I'll give you the $6 billion right now. And I think he would do it.
And of course, what I'm about to say is going to sound conservative because it is fiscally conservative, I'm about to say. But the whole idea of why I think Donald Trump's candidacy was, in the beginning, resonated with so many people was the whole, remember we say waste, fraud, and abuse, waste, fraud, and abuse, waste, fraud, and abuse. And I think that there's a part of that our country in specific just hasn't kept our government accountable for how they've spent money. And so now you hear numbers like, 1.75 trillion or 3.5 trillion. You're almost like, it's not even real. Those are incomprehensible figures. But that,
it's
like,
nothing in the multiverse.
Nothing in the multiverse. Well, it's inflation in the multiverse. But, then you start experiencing inflation. You start hearing the things like, 40% of every dollar that's ever been printed has been printed in the last 12 months. I mean, these are things that are, oh my gosh,
we must have come across a lot more gold recently.
Exactly. Well, it's like, you might as well, print more money for the people who don't have any money, and there we go. But
that's what we have to do.
Right, but that's not where it's going. And so we've got these, that saw Donald Trump's hard to. He's not on social media anymore. I wonder if he'd be on the metaverse. No, I'm just kidding. But believe me, I think that he had an interview with Janine. The former Judge Janine, okay, on Fox News, and this is interesting to me because he was talking about his interactions with General Milley, okay, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, something like that, that same under him, under Joe Biden, and he was talking about how I want every nut and bolt and screw, I want it all removed because he wanted to get out of Afghanistan too, and General Milley said, "Sir, it'll be cheaper to leave it there than it will be to bring it home," and he said, "What are you talking about? Cheaper to bring a tank, cheaper to leave a $10 million tank or a $50 million airplane than it would be to fly it to Pakistan and fly it home." And so here are the things that resonates with people.
Yeah.
He's like, what do you mean it's cheaper to pull the guts out of this $50 million plane that we...
And then we didn't.
And if you even watch that, and I'm not trying to make it political, I'm just like, I think that it's the same political talking heads that are telling us that it's, it's the rich's fault. When it's like, time out. If you watch that 9/11 Turning Point documentary on Netflix, I don't think it's either side political leaning. Like I watch, it's pretty straight down the middle. Once you think it's that way, it'll go that way. Once you think it's that way, it'll go that way. But it talks about how we bought an Italian-built plane, military plane, for $100 million to supply to the Afghan army, okay? And their first ever time, we trained the pilots, put all the money into these training programs. The first time they ever flew it, they crashed it, it exploded, $100 million gone in a second. I mean, how many billions of dollars that we spent like that? There's stories of a facility being built.
How many people that would feed?
a facility being built for $30 million that the general there on the ground said, hey, we won't use it. Built it, we won't use it. Built it for $30 million, never used it. And I'm not trying to be political here, I know. I'm just saying that there's plenty of cash.
Right.
There's plenty of money.
Yeah.
So
$1,100.
We're not in a resource deficit.
Right,
We're in a
let's
management
yell at
deficit.
capitalism because our government isn't spending money correctly.
I agree.
So it's like
a good
that's
point.
where it's like, where are we gonna? You're gonna blame someone like Elon Musk for having billions and billions of dollars, or are you gonna blame the government
wasting
who
it.
has the ability to literally print the money for wasting it? You know, I
Wasting
don't know.
it.
That's just my opinion.
I agree. Will you go to Mars?
Will I go to Mars?
Yeah. Will you go to Mars? Would you move to Mars?
Probably not move to Mars.
No.
But I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
they don't need missionaries in Mars. So,
I have zero interest in going.
I
Do you-
know.
do you want to go? I have zero.
Like, I haven't even made it to
Utah.
top 10 places. I was gonna say top 10 places in this planet, and we're talking about we need to go to a red, desolate planet. I don't
On
know
to-
that
on
I
top-
need
It's
to.
beautiful. I'd go, but I don't think it's going to be very
Okay,
beautiful.
I
think it's
don't
gonna be
even
kinda
want to make the
boring.
trip to Fiji, and that is like on my bucket list
I
because
know.
it's a 20-hour flight. I can't imagine what it would be like flying to Mars.
I know.
It's too long of a flight.
Yeah. He says it's gonna take 6 months, and then hopefully over the next few years get it down to 3 months, maybe 1 month.
Because of the orbit patterns.
I
Because you have to catch it at a
I
certain
will
time.
listen. I would say this: if you allow people like Elon Musk to go and create, I think it'll happen.
It's also
I
like
think it will.
because I agree with
just-
everything we're saying
I
about
just
the
don't
money,
know
but
if
it's also like a fascinating example of modern situational ethics. Because I heard one of the other arguments I heard him say is, yes, I'm like you said, like one of his burning passions has been to help the future of humanity.
Yeah.
But part of that is that one of the reasons he has such an urgency to spend all this money towards sustainable, renewable energy, but then also towards Mars is it's an interesting thought. He's like, if all of humanity is in one spot and the wrong meteor hits us at the wrong time or the right time, however you phrase it, he said we're gone. He said so for
Then we
him,
won't care.
he's like, why wouldn't 1% of the wealth, at least 1%, be spent on actually helping possibly save the future of humanity and get us to a place where we can actually build a new civilization?
So he
it's
thinks
fascinating.
So he
question
thinks
is
that
that-
humanity is good and needs to be.
he thinks
needs
humanity
to be
should
preserved.
be. Yeah, I guess that would be the question.
That's what he says.
Well, I know. I'm just.
It's just an
I
interesting
just-
point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that.
Why would you believe humanity is good outside of Christian morality? In my opinion.
No, I agree. It's really odd.
Well, I mean,
I was
worth
watching.
saving.
Say what?
Or worth saving.
Or we're saving. Yeah, I don't know. He believes he actually used an interesting phrase when it comes to it. It's the preservation of consciousness, the light of consciousness. I so in my deep dive, I watched Rainn Wilson. You ever seen this thing Soul Pancake?
No.
He did a Soul Pancake. The guy that plays Dwight in The Office. He had Elon Musk in his van like 9 years ago, and they had this fascinating episode called "The Metaphysical Milkshake," and he was asking Elon Musk what he believes in. Elon Musk, part of him thinks we might be in a simulation, that everything we're experiencing in the universe is a simulation.
Okay.
The other side of him is not very spiritual at all, but it's really interesting because it reminded me of one of from the series you're doing.
Yeah.
He's like, but my biggest, he said one of his biggest mystiques is what are thoughts and where does consciousness actually come from? Anyways, it was really, really interesting. But to me, the fascinating part was how he was, I'd never really heard him explain why he had the urgency for Mars. That it doesn't seem to be on the surface just some egotistical, ego trip, but it actually seems to be, no, I want to like save humanity, and this might be the only way to do it. But was the fascinating way of how they would go there, because I always wondered, how does he think life's going to happen on Mars? But they would go there, I guess, build this whole glass encasement and build greenhouses that eventually would actually transform the entire atmosphere of Mars.
I wonder how. I mean, I guess they know what material is on there. Can you imagine just you're the one that has to come up with the foundation for these glass things in a material you've never dug in? I mean, it's just.
What's crazy to
Like
me
we're
is
just
that
gonna
we
go
can
build
think about,
this and drop it there. So gravity's gonna keep it there. What do we know about the gravitational force there? I'm sure
Well,
we probably do. Like, how is this stuff?
Oh, and he claims that life can grow in the soil of Mars. I never knew that.
Well, have you seen that movie with was it Matt Damon?
Interstellar?
Martian.
Oh, Martian.
No, the Martian.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
we
yeah.
know it
Potatoes.
already. He was a botanist. We know
Potatoes.
it works.
Listen, isn't it fascinating that we can talk about getting to Mars and starting civilization on Mars, but we can't figure out how to keep humans from dying?
Yeah.
That's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Like how we can't replace every organ with a prosthetic organ
Well, they're
that'll
working
do the
on it.
same thing, and that. But it's crazy that we're not there yet. I mean, really, for the first time ever, life expectancy's gone down. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, he actually predicted. I heard him talking about, wired into our DNA. The way he explained humans, he explains it's almost like robots in the way he looks at it.
But that's actually very common.
Right.
That's a very common evolutionary construct.
Yeah.
So, whether, like I said, you read any of Richard Dawkins' books on there, and
Fruit flies are wired to last for weeks.
well,
Humans
your-
are wired to last for 80
your
years.
DNA, though, is the part that is the real you. Your body is a physical machine
Yeah.
to carry the DNA on.
But he believes it's going to be a while because of the fragile, philosophical, religious nature of DNA. But he actually believes there will come a day where we will be able to break and crack and repair the DNA code to where humans will last forever. Isn't that crazy?
I don't know about that. That's interesting. Because I don't know that our DNA really affects whether or not we're going to live forever or not.
He
It's
says,
the length of our chromosomes.
But that's
Or
but to
mitochondria.
me, it's the problem is
Whatever.
that everything that our DNA as a playbook creates ends up deteriorating. So
unless you repaired or changed the DNA.
all of our, which is growing new organs, which is, you know what I mean, replacing and doing all of that. I just don't know how much is life worth living to the point where we have to have surgeries to go, okay, we grew you a new heart, so it's time to put the heart in.
Do you want to talk
We
about
grew
it?
you a new liver, so we need to. I'm just saying, at some point, is that the kind of experience that we want?
Yeah.
Want to talk about
But I will say this. Why would I not? I would say this though: if your view of reality is that this is all you have,
Right.
then you will do everything you can to save it.
Yep.
That is a self-surviving instinct inside of us all. So and this is, I think, where we would differ from. I would differ from having a spiritual context in my life where I believe that, hey, I do believe that we're eternal, but this physical life is temporal, and so the view is very different. The view is like, hey, my body dies and wears out. I think I'm going on to something better. Now, if you only have a materialistic worldview, you're never going to think that way. You're going to think we have to save this because once I'm done, I'm done. Consciousness is over. My body is over. Everything. It's kind of like I can't remember which one. I think it was Stephen Hawking. I think when he was in was it Stephen Hawking was one of them, that when he was in a hospital and somebody was going up and trying to tell him, okay, so just so you know, you have this, and your body is doing this, and it was Stephen Hawking and one of them, and he stopped him, interrupted him, and he says, no, my body isn't. He says, I am a body. No, my body doesn't have this. I am a body. And so that's the mindset of a purely naturalistic worldview where there is no spiritual, there is no eternal, there is nothing after that. This is what you have. And so what I'm saying, it doesn't surprise me that the idea is we need to save humanity. We need to save the DNA. We need to use the DNA to reproduce the things in our body that keep us alive.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
That would be the mindset.
Yeah.
So that's a huge difference, though.
But it is interesting the questions that Elon Musk asked, which is the question of why are we here and what's the purpose, and no matter if you have billions and billions of dollars or if you've got $20,000 that you make every year, or if you don't make any money and you're sitting on the side of the road, that question of why are we here? Why does this exist?
Rainn Wilson said, "What is your biggest question?" And he said, "My biggest question is, what is the question?"
Right.
So that is philosophy where it just spins not spins in circles, but everything is questioned. Your reality is not really reality, or if you don't have the consciousness to understand the reality, or if you can't be observed from the outside, then what you are experiencing is not real. I mean, it just goes into that's philosophy. I mean, he's a philosopher.
He really does have that side to him.
He does.
Aren't we all, though? It's very interesting. What else do you want to bring up about
I don't
Elon?
know. I just think he's fascinating. I heard. So, they call him, they asked him, like, what do you think about this whole thought of, I'm just riffing, but they're like, what do you think about this whole thought of everybody calls you the real life Iron Man? And one of the things I think is weird is that he's not super well spoken. Like, he's brilliant, but he like stutters a lot. I don't know. It's I just find it odd. But they were asking him, they're like, could you really do that? And what do you think about that? He goes, well, I guess I am in ways. He's like, in other ways I'm not. He goes, but it would be pretty easy to create a flying suit. I could do that. And they're like, you could? And they're like, why haven't you done that? He's like, I don't know. I mean, there's too much. He's like, because then he said jetpacks really do exist in some way. He said, but then can you imagine everybody in the LA smog and what would result if everybody's flying back and forth? So that made me actually wonder, like, is that part of the future? Will people eventually have jetpacks and fly back and forth? But anyways,
But why would you need to
I don't
if we're
know.
all existing in
Because
the
they're
metaverse?
jetpacks.
But we're in the metaverse.
They're so
why
cool.
would you need to?
would you take a jetpack into the metaverse?
Would you
But
be in the
can
metaverse
buy
while you're
one
jetpacking?
for however many coin that you can get for if you hit these bricks enough times with your
Is
head.
meta
you
in
can get.
the jetpack industry too.
Well,
so.
I wonder if the whole
knows?
virtual universe and world is just going to eliminate air travel.
That's true.
Why do we need to travel? I can just put on my goggles and I can just boom. I can just sit there and I'm like on
I'm
the
there.
beach somewhere, wherever there is, or Mars. Why do I need to go to Mars?
Listen, I think it's fascinating.
Anyways.
I love talking about these things with you guys, and I think at the end of the day, our hope is always that we just have that people get a window in on how on the thoughts that we have in how we metabolize the happenings of the current events in the world and the most influential people in the world, and loving Jesus and following Jesus at the same time, and how those two things kind of come together and how they exist. So I don't know, any parting words.
I had, this is gonna sound, y'all are probably gonna laugh at me. This it may sound cheesy, but I was inspired by just the way my mind works when I heard him describe how you would make Mars inhabitable by terraforming it and by actually planting things in the soil that would eventually change the atmosphere, that would make a place that was toxic, extreme temperatures, unlivable, actually eventually, if he's right, in theory, be like Earth. And the weird way my mind thinks, it was almost like a challenge / inspiration to me of like, what would it look like for me to terraform all the areas of my life? Like, what are the spaces of my life, or even my heart or my spirit, or just environments that I'm around that may seem really hopeless or maybe seem really desolate, but that if I plant the right things and I bring the right material, if I bring the right spirit, if I bring the right ingredients, even for the sake of like in a environment or work environment, what does it look like to kind of create the kind of environments where the people around me can thrive and flourish? Mm-hmm. And what does it look like in the areas of my life to terraform the spaces of my world?
That's good.
I think the takeaway from our conversation for me is, the whole question about like what should the uber wealthy be responsible? Him saying, "Well, I'll provide the money if you came up with a good way." Just that in that conversation, one of the things I'm inspired by someone like Elon Musk is that I don't think he creates things just for himself. I do think he creates things for the world. Mm-hmm. I think he creates the space travel. He's got a bigger picture in mind. The electric vehicles, bigger picture in mind. I think he's a genius in how he's going about those things and what he's creating. But I think in a way, what it challenges me with is I just think all of us, we don't need just one Elon Musk. I think all of us should kind of look inward and go, in what I'm doing, is it for a bigger purpose than just myself? Am I have a job and I just have this and I'm just trying to make a certain amount of money and I just want to retire and I want to have a boat one day and I want to just, or I want to have an apartment in this place and I want to be able to travel. Like that's great. Hopefully that'll happen. But one thing I like about Elon Musk is that he's trying to go create these things and the wealth is coming.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think we tend to get it backwards, which is, well, if I can get wealthy, then I would go create something. And that's never going to happen.
Someone asked him about his business plan. He said, I don't really have one. He didn't have a business plan.
No,
he just has a drive.
He has ideas and a drive, and he goes after. But I think we should all be a little bit challenged with this idea that am I building or creating something that would make this world better? It's going to be for someone else. Like whether it's, hey, why don't, if you go, man, I wish somebody would do something about global poverty. Okay, why don't you do something about it? Okay, I may not be able to solve all of the world's problems with global poverty, but you know what I could do? I could make a difference in someone's life, or I could help someone. Maybe not just here's some bread, but let me help you get out of this situation. How do I lift someone out of that situation? And I think if we all had a more of a personal internal compass that said, man, I want to have purpose in my life. I want to make this world better. I want to leave this world better. Unless they figure out with genetics so that I don't ever have to leave it.
Right. Or just go to Mars.
Or we go to Mars.
Yeah.
That's it.
I don't know. I think I resonate with everything you guys are saying. I think that the big challenge right now in a world where people are doing things that are so big is, are you willing to do the thing that's so small? So I do think there's an entitlement culture, but I also think there's a scarcity culture of like, hey, we just can't do it. Well, how about this? Like, you can afford to pay for the person behind you at Starbucks.
Yep.
So just quick soul check. Like, why you? Let's not like say that Elon Musk needs to go and spend $6 billion doing this or that, for example.
Can I tell you a funny story about that?
Not buy a latte. Go ahead.
So this is my internal struggle. Okay, all right. So my wife and I, we were out one evening, and we were,
I'll pay for your stuff.
But
how much does it cost?
It was okay. So we went through like a Taco Bell drive-through, and Taco Bell is cheap. The reason why you go to Taco Bell is because it's late at night, and it was cheap. And my wife loves Taco Bell.
And you had a bad day.
I don't love that.
Right.
Or you had a really good day.
And it's near midnight.
And it was kind of like, hey, let's not spend a bunch of money. I think we had spent a bunch of money like the previous day or something shopping. And I was like, we don't need to. And she was like, let's go somewhere. Okay, let's go to Taco Bell. It's real cheap, right? So we go to Taco Bell. I think our order is like $7 and some cents. We go through. I pull up at the window, and I go to pay him. He says, hey, the car in front of you paid for you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's great.
That's great.
And my wife leans over, she goes, pay for the people behind us. And I'm like, okay. I was like, hey, you know what? I want to pay for the car behind me. The guy looks at me before he grabs the card, and he says, hey, just so you know, I think their order was like $26. It was like, that's a lot for Taco Bell. You know what I mean? And I had
That's
this.
not for me. That's not for me.
And it was
created an internal struggle.
Yeah, you said, can I have a half of a chalupa, please?
$26 at Taco Bell buy you a lot of food.
I eat a lot of food.
And did you spend that much money at Taco Bell?
I mean,
It's like $5, $6.
When you DoorDash, it comes close to that. Not that I would know, but
Oh my gosh! Well, that's because you're paying $12 for that. But anyway, so paid for the person's
man.
meal, but there was a little bit of a came here for was going to cost me $7, cost me $26. There you go.
But
anyways,
not
funny
all
story
of us are supposed to create multi-planetary systems for mankind.
Some
or
of us just pay for
end
someone's Taco
hunger.
Bell.
Well,
But
and
you
I
can't
like-
end hunger, but you can feed somebody a meal.
You could.
Well, and I like what you said earlier too. Kind of goes back to what you were saying is people tend to, whatever their thing is, get judgy if
passionate
you're not
about
about their thing.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to celebrate that everybody has their own passions. That doesn't excuse that we should all want to make humanity better. In an ideal world, we would all be sacrificial and generous and loving, but everybody's not. But it's kind of like what you were saying, that happens in the church world too. If somebody's really passionate about a certain thing, if they're not healthy or if they're not mature, they expect everybody or even the whole church to be about that thing. One of my former pastors, Lee, he used to do this thing where if anybody would come up and be like, I think the church needs to be more about that, he would just reply, sounds like God's calling you to start that.
Yeah.
And
immediately back down.
you're right, because unless you're just saying it because it's your veiled self-righteous excuse to cast stones at somebody, if it actually is a burden, then I think the statement is just go do it.
Yeah.
Go create
I think
it.
that's my big thing right now is I feel super convicted in my own life in the micro than in the macro.
Yeah.
You know, I think that macro isn't built for everybody. Not everybody's supposed to be a macro, like everybody can't start Tesla or else Tesla wouldn't be Tesla. There's a reason Tesla's Tesla's because no one's ever started Tesla. Okay. It's like, so just to think that, and I don't want that to be the subliminal message people hear out of the conversations we have is dream big and you can blah, blah, blah. It's like not everybody is supposed to do that. And that's totally fine because guess what? We need somebody who
we can all do something.
But you can do something,
Yeah.
but it's not insignificant if it's to one person
Yeah.
or in private or not for profit
Right.
or for,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Or
Or collectively,
or if nobody ever hears about it,
Right.
or if you just do
Yeah.
it and it helps someone in a little way and they didn't even know that you did it. I mean,
Yeah.
or if it's if it's anonymous, these are all things that will probably change the world around you more than you starting Fesla or whatever you want to start. The next iteration, or if you want to
Jetta.
take people to Venus. I just think that right now in a world where we look at everybody else's success and we look at everybody else's money and we look at everybody else's accomplishments and what everybody else has built, it's becoming more and more important that you look at like your neighbor.
Yeah. I
That's
agree.
right.
That's good.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. You guys are great conversation.
Yeah.
Go buy you a Tesla, save some money on gas, which we need right now.
Buy me one.
Okay,
Love one.
I would love one.
I'll get you a Series S. Just kidding. I'm buying a Plaid. All right, guys, we love you, and I'll see you next. We'll try that again. We love you, and we'll see you next week for another episode of the X Podcast. We'd love if you'd like, share, email in which billionaire you'd like to take money from, and we'd love to talk about him or her too. So we'll see you next time.